everybody. I think like we've had a ton of people these last 3 months, and I think everyone's out flying kites in sunshine or whatever it is they're doing. But it's good to have everybody here. I wish we had more people here tonight because I would like to tell them what our next event is. The next time we will be in here is May 5th, which is a Sunday, which is goes against our usual thing, but we have a poet that's coming from Detroit that can only be here on Sunday. So May 5th at 4 o'clock, since it's the Sunday, and I know on Sundays people like to get home so they can get their week started on Monday. So 4 o'clock on Sunday, May 5th, T. James Chapman and Edie Roberts from Detroit will be the people that are here. And Caitlin has been kind enough to make a flyer for all of our upcoming schedule and print out copies of it, which are here. So, and I really appreciate you doing that because I'm a techno idiot, and I would not be able. The graphic, I wouldn't be able to do it. So I just want to thank everybody who is here. We have a lot of things coming up in the month of May. After May 5th, May 11th, 6 days later, Tim Tarkelly will be here with some students from Chanute, Kansas High School, and they're his creative writing students. And then after that, May 25th, Kyle Laws and Tony Brewer will be here. So it's a jam-packed month. But tonight, I'd just like to welcome up Walter Bargen, who was the very first state poet laureate of Missouri. So it's an honor to have him here. He has several books on the table. The first time I ever heard him was at State Fair Community College in Sedalia. And that reading was strange, but I do recall that he was the only poet that I enjoyed. So it's a pleasure to have him here because I prefer to enjoy what I'm doing. So with that, I'd just like to welcome up Walter Bargen.
Although I've told a few people what happened to me last week, I'll say it again because I'm starting off by making excuses for myself, okay? Which you should never do, but I think that it's only fair because right now I'm swimming on muscle relaxants and painkillers. I've been told numerous times that I am too old to be splitting wood with an axe.
So Walter, for you it's really sunny out there.
Well, it's actually quite pleasant and quite laid back, but I'm afraid I'm a little too laid back today. Anyway, so I am going to start with a poem that I kind of stumbled upon that I had abandoned, like most of my poems, and then rediscovered them, and I'm thrilled by what I find. And this is kind of an introduction for me, about me. It's called Aging Paladin Begs to Ride in the Quantum Rodeo. Thanks for your phone message. The long and winding fiber optic trail that lassos our lives together. It's a matter of entertaining the illusion inside the delusion. Engaged, enraged, digested, disgorged, renovated, rekindled. Too early to say. I'm also a variable for next year. My equation, have time, will travel. And of course, did you guys ever see that black and white?
Yep.
Yeah, have gun will travel is what it's called.
Paladin.
Yeah, right? Paladin, yeah. That's what inspired this in a way, It became kind of the structure. My equation, have time, will travel. The horse is a little old, and the cowboy hat, a broad-brimmed anthracitic felt, Try balancing a fist of coal on your head while mounted on a sway-back hag headed for the panhandle of death. See if your neck hurts. Just more stray gossip along the dusty trail. You know those whirligig dust devils will spread every rumor to protect their random swirling cornucopias. A saddle-sore thought. No, seriously. I swear by a glass of milk, but won't drink it. It happened this way. The moon fell into its own lunatic languishing. It happened this way. The moon fell into its own lunatic languor. A word that I have trouble pronouncing. I probably mispronounced it again. And drowned in the glass. Displaced bodily fluids dripped off the table. A disclaimer. A cow never jumped over any celestial objects. But the cat lapped up one or two. Do I caterwaul in your alley? Then I caterwaul. This is all to say, if there's a place, there's a time. If there's a time, there's a space. And I can fill it for a little while. So keep me in an open mind.
Hey, Walter, reach under the center. There's a little turn screw. Maybe that'll, and you'll see it. Maybe it'll tighten.
Oh, okay.
Can you I that thing's
There you go.
Yeah, much better.
I don't know if you're familiar with the poet Catherine Pierce. When I organized a reading series many years ago, she read there a few times. And this is a dynamite poem. This is a spring poem, and I thought, how appropriate. Dear spring, commit! Burst your bee in bloom, your blaze of blue. Get heady, get frocked, get spun. Enough of your tentative little breaths, your one-day daffodils, one-day dew frost. Honeysuckle us right to our knees. Wake us with all-night mockingbirds, your rowdy tree frogs. Gust and dust us. Pollen bomb the Hondas and front halls. But please, no more of this considering, this delicate tendriling. Your pale green worries me. Your barely tuliped branches, your slim shoots, any sideways look could do. The truth is, I don't want to think about fragility anymore. I can't handle a blown glass season. Every grass blade and dogwood so wreckable. I'm trying hard to teach the infallibility of night lights, to ignore the revving of my own fallible heart. Spring, you're not helping. Go all in. Throw your white blossoms into my gutters. Flood my garage. Mud my new shoes. Leave me afternoon streaked and sweating. Vine yourself around me. Hold me to you tighter. I recommend all of her books, her latest ones, and I can't recall a single title at this point. You can look it up on the internet. They're really worth reading. Here's another short spring poem. Give me one moment with a robin and a sunrise, a little wonder in a suffering world, a little delight in a world of pain, and then begin again. That's Sam Hamill. Okay, it's hard to, I think one of the things that is, that most poets suffer from is we get desperate for relevance. And, we try to figure out how to be relevant because so much poetry tends to look inside ourselves and we don't follow what's happening in the world. One day when I was working before I retired, this friend at the hall, a computer programmer, showed up at my door and said, here, look at this photograph. And here, I brought you some salt. He had been to the Red Sea. No, the Sea of Galilee. No, hold it, the Dead Sea. Which one is it?
The Dead Sea.
The Dead Sea, the Dead Sea, yes, okay. And here's the little story. There's a sign at the edge of the Dead Sea in the Middle East printed in 3 languages, Arabic, Hebrew, and English. It says, "Danger of drowning." Not so unusual, but the Dead Sea is no longer in sight of this sign. The current shore of the Dead Sea and the sign are miles apart. In a parched land, the demand for water and the overuse of that water, mostly from irrigation, has left us with the irony of this sign, and it's too large to miss. I'm going to write a poem about this, but I read this and I thought, this is really interesting. The sign is there, the water and shore miles away. We are still drowning in overuse, drowning in dryness of our lives, which is just as life-threatening as all the wars. The discovered subject is rarely accidental because the writer has trained his or her attention to catch the subject, even when he or she doesn't know what the subject is. And then it goes on talking about how to select an interesting subject for a poem. So I thought, well, I've left the books over there just a minute. Have too many of you heard me read these 2 kind of short poems from the Middle East? Okay. Well, I'll begin with the Israeli poet Yehudi Amichai, and he is, or I should say he was. He's deceased now. He fought in the 1967 war in the Middle East when a number of Arab countries invaded Israel, trying to drive them out. But really, a very empathetic poet. The diameter of the bomb was 30 centimeters, and the diameter of its effective range about 7 meters. With 4 dead and 11 wounded, and around these, in a larger circle, a pain and time. 2 hospitals are scattered in 1 graveyard. But the young woman who was buried in the city she came from, at a distance of more than 100 kilometers, enlarges the circle considerably. And the solitary man mourning her death at the distant shores of a country far across the sea includes the entire world in the circle. And I won't even mention the crying of orphans, that it reaches up to the throne of God and beyond, making a circle with no end and no God. And this is Mahmoud Darwish, who is also deceased. And they died of old age. The war will end. The leaders will shake hands. The old woman will keep waiting for her. The old woman will keep waiting for her martyred son. That girl will wait for her beloved husband. And those children will wait for their heroic father. I don't know who sold out our homeland, but I saw who paid the price. Okay, back to fooling around here. I started off being a nature poet. And I embrace the stigma gladly. But I think what I write and call nature poets is somewhat different from what people generally think. This poem is called Killer Butterfly. I keep coming back to the story of the mountain lion, 4th largest cat on the planet, after tigers, after tawny beasts of the African veldt, after something that roars in my sleep. The quiet creature moved into a rich boulder suburb where a man jumped on the lion's back when he saw its prey to be his daughter's cat. As it tried to escape, the man dragged it back into the yard by its tail and held it in a headlock, attempting to free the tabby with his other hand. A massive hind paw swatted the man across the cheek. Suddenly aware of not 1 but 4 clawed fists, he let go. For months now, I'm going out at night, taking the compost to the garden, retrieving an armload of firewood, searching out stars, a corner of sky to escape into. I've thought of them, looked for their green eyes reflecting the flashlight beam back at me. Crouched there in the high weeds behind the garden fence are perched on a low oak branch. These lions stalk nightly to prey on me. Behind the house, on the suburban street, the lion returned to kill a mule deer. The neighbors gathered at the kitchen window, drinking wine, eating cheese, watching days of bloody feasting, a mother and her 2 half-grown kittens. Only when the lion crouched in an open garage, stalking a woman unloading groceries, the woman jumping back in the car and blowing the car's horn as if her life depended on it, did the lion run off and hasn't returned. Across the creek from my house in this next county, roadkill turns out to be a young lion. First confirmed sighting in 100 years. Now I'm told the woman who sits in the front desk, receptionist, from 4 to 5 each afternoon, is afraid of butterflies. Outside the warehouse, the air is haphazardly pasted with the orange and black papery wings of a migration that stretches from Canada to Mexico. Though there are fewer and fewer monarchs each year, now mostly drowned in the pesticides of Monsanto. In the Sierra Madres each winter, there are trees that turn into butterflies and in spring fall back to earth as trees. Yesterday I found a monarch in the gutter, touched by a passing car, its wings caught in a final stroke of flight. I happened to place it in a small flower pot on the counter that holds a philodendron hostage. At any moment, I'll hear the screams of a butterfly and a receptionist devoured by a brilliantly winged wound. I'm sure all of you will want to leave today if you don't have it already. Too late to turn back, only because there's a picture of me on the back with a snake that I caught. And this is a story of a different snake. For some reason, where I live seems to be attracted to rattlesnakes. And over the years that I've lived there, I probably have caught over 15 rattlesnakes. And you'll hear what I do with them. It's called bucket music. The first time I caught a rattlesnake, it was barehanded. Its scales the size of tarnished pennies. I used a sponge mop to hold it down. I quickly grabbed behind its flat head, pits swollen with poison, lightning quick, its thick body coiled, constricted around my forearm as it began to twist, and I couldn't stop it from breaking free. Jerking my arm back, jumping back, both at once, I dropped the snake to the ground. My unwanted partner in this strange dance didn't make another move. On the second try, pressing a forked stick down into the dirt behind its head, I placed my boot on its tail and picked it up with both ends. Placed in a terrarium, it learned to strike at the movie camera that was daily turned on it. I realized after a week it went directly toward the lens and a man running away with a tumbling frame of sky. That we released it from the terrarium. A friend mentions that decades ago, her mother raced out the back door of their home in the red dirt plains of Oklahoma with a shovel to beat a 6-foot-long diamondback to death. Through the F-hole of her violin, her father inserted the severed rattle, talisman to shake awake her virtuosity. It never did. Some evenings, she searches corners for a coiled violin. Just yesterday, sitting on the porch, oaks and buckbrush more green than anyone can remember for August, as if summer was permanently planted in these fields and trees, the forest filled with the incessant insect chorus. I began to wonder why their song wasn't rising and falling. I saw 3 cats staring into the center of the triangle they formed. Other times, I've thought that bees were swarming before I noticed the cats. I went to the shed, retrieved a 5-gallon plastic bucket and a slightly smaller one, a long-handled shovel and leather gloves. The cats backed away as I placed the open end of the bucket over the timber rattler. It struck at me twice before its rattle slipped under the bucket. Sliding a piece of rusty sheet metal underneath the rim, I flipped it over, placed a second bucket inside the first, sealing the snake in. It was the sound of a rain stick, but more a downpour than a gentle drizzle. Driving far into the wildlife refuge, the unbroken warning flooded the car. This snake, when it showed up right underneath, I set the picture window if you want, but the picture window is practically on the ground, was all brown. I had never seen an all brown snake that large before in Missouri, and I didn't know what it was. So I went out and I caught it. I was 99.9% certain it was not poisonous. You know, it didn't have the triangular head, didn't have the cat eyes. It had round pupils. And I kept looking at it, and I finally drove it over to, on the next road to a science teacher. And he looked at it and he says, I don't know. He says, let's go get a hose and wash it off. And we washed it off, and it was an absolutely beautiful northern water snake, in which I then drove to the Ashland Wildlife Refuge and released it into the pond there. But that's what this picture's about. I'm holding it after the snake had gotten washed, but I still had gloves on, otherwise I would have handled it with my hands. So, now here's a mystery, page 19. Well, maybe it's in here. It is. Another snake poem. I heard the high-pitched squeals of distress coming from an embankment at the upper end of a city lake. I stepped through the high grass until seeing the shine of coiled black scales. I couldn't see its head and used my foot to nudge it until it turned out of its own entangling, jaw unhinged and stared back, heartily concerned with the intrusion, its neck continuing to convulse and ripple, a slow drawing down of fur into its mouth. A few feet away, the nest entrance was littered with torn bedding, hair and straw, and one small rabbit stared out, as if not understanding, or frozen to fear, knowing there was no place else, or what was the use. The interminable list of us repeats after a long day. And what could something do so young, but run into another mouth? I didn't chase it off, and stood as by as the snake worked at swallowing what seemed impossible, a body 4 times wider than itself. And it too paused as if in doubt. Straightening its body, slow undulations began a pumping up and down, a writhing, until the long-eared head was left, protruding from the snake's lipless mouth, head within head like lacquered Chinese boxes, each opened lid leading to a smaller identical one, hinting of an endless diminishing. Then one box opens its eyes and screams. Okay, one more nature poem, and I'm probably lying by saying that, but we'll see. This is called the bus effect. You know, whoever came up with it. Oh, you know, a butterfly flaps its wings in Brazil, and there's a hurricane in London as a result of that, and that's playing on that idea. It's too cheap this late in the day, this late in the century. A butterfly dreaming a man, or a man dreaming a butterfly. Monsanto is taking care of that either way. Who could believe a great fritillary rolling up its powdery wings into stiff arms and climbing down from its half-eaten leaf, or the metamorphosis of a hairy worm into beauty, a spangled iridescence lifting into the river of air? A likely story, all in the eyes of the beholder. Either way, dinner for a bird, though viceroy and monarch protect each other's fragile reigns, a poisonous migration of mimicry, and we can only follow their unpredictable flight across the fields of another year. And then there's the man whose dawn is a talcum haze, who rises working his way out of the twisted cocoon of sleep into a sullied morning, his arms rising uncontrollably, a spastic fluttering that would suggest an uprising of the brain's nether regions, misfirings across synaptic bridges, sabotage, but he swears by his transmutation and then scoot into a swallow's beak. His words are lost forever, as in a breeze in Brazil rings a duller worry chorus. And in this way, the kind my daughter refuses to ride, the school bus, is called a cheese wagon. And the unplanned trip I'm taking in this dream, sitting in the empty back row as it follows dusty, unmarked back roads, and after this non-stop trip turns into the driveway of a house under construction, drives through an unfinished wall into the middle of the living room, and from the back window I see upturned sawhorses, scattered piles of brick, and a muddy floor. There's no way for the bus to back out, and that the house must be built around the house. And so it's the house signaling to turn left at a lonely intersection, the house cruising Main Street, the house dreaming a bus, and it's the bus opening its swinging door to free the butterfly that flew in through the window. Is my time up?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay. This cover right here is done by Mike Sled, and he's done maybe like 13 or 14 of my covers now, and or they're his covers, my book. And one of the things that's happened to me that I've spent the last last 2 years following closely is the insanity of what's happening in Ukraine. And I read this poem and I thought, oh gosh, you know, I've been doing this the entire time. The first 70 pages of this book are poems about conflict. And this is life drawings, and it begins with an epigraph by Alfred North Whitehead. All truths are half-truths. Now, if you think about that, that means that there's no truths at all. That is the way in which we generally conceive truth, is something that is eternal, something that's unchanging, something that's monolithic. And interesting enough, maybe 75 years before Whitehead, Friedrich Wilhelm Nietzsche said, truth is impossible. It's only observations and implications and our will to power that declares something truth. So, you know, I've been messing around with truth lately, and those are a couple of things that caught my attention. So this is going to a hospital and going through 2 or 3 different wards and seeing people who've been wounded as a result of the conflict, the unnamed conflict in this case. In this ward are children with missing feet, who hold up drawings of missing feet, who tell us one night they sat on the edge of a great storm called history, and they removed their shoes and their feet followed as they slipped them under their beds. In the morning, they couldn't find them. They ask us to please ignore the crutches they are practicing. It was always their desire to walk on air. Looking closer, there are rainbow feathered wings sprouting on the crayon lines of their ankles. The men in this ward are missing both arms and hold between their teeth drawings of their arms. They have scratched stick figures on their bleeding tongues. They tell us they were not common murderers, lurking in shadows, stealing lives, but soldiers. One day, in an uproar of earth and buildings, their arms flew off to perch in splintered branches on shattered windowsills. Now they can't hold their guns, embrace a tree. We shake hands to feet in greeting their I think my muscle relaxants are kicking in a little too soon. We shake hands to feet in greetings. They apologize for their dirty souls. Down this corridor are the citizens with missing heads, who balance drawings of their heads on their necks. They cut slits just under bushy pencil eyebrows fastened to pull tabs to flutter their paper eyelids mascaraed with red and silver sparkles. They wink at our passing. They understand what it's like to walk through a forest of stumps and hear not the corridor fan turned on to exhaust the overwhelming antiseptic fumes, but the rustle of dry leaves that are their paper-thin heads. They ask forgiveness for having thought less of us, the thick-skulled ones who want to see it only our way. I've never read that one in public before, as I've not read this one before either. This is called Skin Map. I've had a number of people ask, days like this are necessary? Are these days really necessary? What can I say? Skinned map. Last fall's fields, a sorry mess of shattered stalks and shotgun shells. Horizons of mayhem, gutted, wing-ravaged clouds bellying over hedge-apple windbreaks. Somber suited, they work the furrows, the corn crutches of another hobbled season. Heads down, monkish crows methodical in their march along the rows, dark notes scored to a muddy dirge. Deep-cleated tractor tracks mark the composer's orphaned signature. A desolate chorus, blackened birds lacerate late February air. They pluck feathers for Euripides and Sophocles, for the fallen Trojans, the Spartans at Thermopylae. Their crank cries feed our torments as another man dies under our skins. Well, let's see here if anything else makes any sense to me here. Oh, just to add another little addition to those two quotations that I gave you from about truth. Kurt Vonnegut wrote a book called Bluebeard.
Which is a great book.
And he has a little statement in there because about belief. And he says that 90% of the universe is belief. The other 10%, who knows? So, when you think about that, the truth is, if you're dealing with truth at all, it's just what you believe. So, it's really fascinating to go into it and kind of look at what other people are saying about it. But something lighter. Oh, here is the very first poem of conflict that I ever wrote. It was pre-1975, was published by New Letters magazine. It's really short, it's very imagistic, and really at that time I was writing poems that were densely imagistic because to me a poem was a rhythm of images, and it was the rhythm of images, if there was any meaning to be had, that would be communicated. Beirut. Machine guns inhabit the rooftops like hungry crows. Bullets peck the library, city hall, Allah's streets, Allah's forehead. To the east, mountains belch dust as artillery fires into the city, planting the bloom of brown orchids on the beach apartments on the Hilton, in courtyards filled with the shattered rosary of bricks. People are opening their bodies for the world to read. The print, still wet and so red, it pours at a stoplight on Broadway and 9th in downtown Columbia, Missouri. physicist from the first part of the 20th century, wrote, the opposite of a correct statement is a false statement, but the opposite of a profound truth is another profound truth. So how can two truths that contradict each other exist? Because truth is monolithic, right? So I don't know. It's fun to play around with that. As you can tell, I was a philosophy major. A poor one at that. This is called Eve's rib. Adam watched a torrent of muscle chase a mare across a field of grass as it curled its lips, nipping her neck, carrying on as if a horsefly was tearing at its rump. It raced back toward the tree line, leaping the ravine, then turning, returning, rearing his front hooves, coming down on either side of her back, the pistons of his flanks fast firing. Knowing the handful of dust he was, Adam wandered down to the creek. In a rootless, rockless place, he worked a hole in the earth, softening it with water, lining it with mud. Down and done, he laid back. When Lilith arrived, do you guys know who Lilith is? Okay, well, just say so if you don't.
No.
No?
No.
Oh, well, in, what should I say? Let me be, in Jewish mythology, okay, let me call it that just for the, Lilith predated Eve. And Lilith met Adam before Adam met Eve. When Lilith arrived, Adam came running throwing his hands down on either side of her back, but she jumped up off her bruised knees and walked out, leaving him far ahead of himself. At last he fell asleep. When he woke, she lay there, sleek as a swan, until she opened her eyes and turned toward the shadow blowing away in the grass. But it was too late to change anything. That night in a field covered with stars, Eve's fingers skipped from rib to rib, not believing a word. Okay, no, that's not it. Okay, here. I've written maybe 3 books of prose poems, and one of them is titled Theban Traffic, and it's this a story of Stella and Jake, who were in a very conflicted relationship. This is called How Tables Learn to Talk. Jake can tell you what and maybe why he pulled back from the covers and got up, sitting for a moment on the edge of the bed, taking one conscious breath and another, inflating the body back to his life. Left hand feeling for glasses on the nightstand, chin on chest, keeping his head from falling to the floor. It was around 2 a.m. when the table startled itself awake, realizing it was no longer in the kitchen and hadn't been for hours. With wooden legs and a lumbering Frankenstein gait, it must have sleepwalked into the living room. Paralyzed with fear, it couldn't make it back to surround itself with chairs, and so became a ventriloquist, shouting through the woman standing next to it, Stella in a nightshirt and naked from the waist down. It must be moved now, not before breakfast, not after showering, not before leaving for work, but now in the moonlight, slipping across the newly waxed floor, dry with shadows. Tables are so hysterical when they wake in the wrong room. This is called Theban timing, and the idea of this book was that 2,500 years ago was kind of like a fluorescence of Greek literature, plays, Sophocles, Aristophanes, Euripides. You know, they were all living in Thebes about 2,500 years ago. And so I kind of used that for a base for writing this very loose story about it, Jake and Stella, and using that because thinking, 2,500 years later, we're still doing the same stupid stuff to each other. And I thought that just gave the book a little more depth. Theme and timing. Hardly a whisper of light at the window. Claws slowly rake the glass. The black cat that sits on the sill has already heard it and wants out, but isn't ready to pounce on the deftly sleeping couple in bed. The radio alarm begins to rattle loose news. Explosions, corruptions, insurrections, floods, houses burglared and burned, the dead mounting every barricade. Jake threads his way through 5 cats stretched over the blankets. He's thinking Monday after the last weekend in November, and he forgot to reset the clocks to daylight savings time. Stella wriggles her way through the same crowd of cats but counts 7 overweight purring bodies. Some's unrequited. They both realize they are late or early for work. Jake hurries upstairs to change the pink digital clock in the study, abandoned by their daughter when she outgrew the color and left for college. Stella, quick to the kitchen to reset the stove clock and the one that hangs over the kitchen table, a childhood relic, a wooden owl whose eyes stopped counting the seconds long ago and now stared in one exaggerated direction, its heart stuffed with gears. Downstairs, Stella spins the clock's arms an hour ahead. Upstairs, Jake draws them back an hour. 2 hours apart. They've lived in this house for 30 years. Do any of you have any requests or any particular subjects that you would like me to read?
No more snakes.
No more. Oh, hey, I started reading snake poems at this one reading, and this young man, maybe our teenager, jumped up and ran into the bathroom and vomited.
Oh my gosh, what a response.
I used to write construction specifications for a architectural firm, and the biggest idiots at the firm were mechanical engineers, but that's my prejudice. I had me knowing nothing had to spend so much time correcting their drawings, but it was the head architect's 60th birthday, and they were talking about different things, and I said, I've got a good idea. I have a friend who's a belly dancer, and she'll come in and dance, a couple of minutes or longer. And here are 60 people crowded into this room, and he's been surprised, and she then comes dancing in with this 8-foot-long boa constrictor, or python probably. And this woman in the back leaps up screaming at the top of her voice. I mean, just shocking. And she goes racing out, and I go, oh my God, so I go racing out after her. And unfortunately, she lays down on the couch that's at the end of the hallway. I don't understand that. I just don't get it, Of course, I tested myself out and got over my fear of snakes when I caught that rattlesnake with bare hands, which I don't do anymore, by the way. I use gloves.
Even the picture of that snake makes me uncomfortable.
Me too.
That's a friendly snake. Yeah,
There are no friendly snakes.
No, that's very unfair.
You put some fur on it, call it a dog.
Just put legs on it and call it a lizard and it's okay.
Yeah, it's a very long lizard. Starting about in 2015, or maybe a little earlier than that, my sense of what a poetry book is became more organized and more directed. Before that, they were collections of poems that I loosely organized under different subjects, which I still do. It's still interesting to do, but I found that having a subject really animated my writing. It really helped me focus and come up with a lot of poems. So this one is called My Other Mother's Red Mercedes, and it's about her trip through dementia. And my mother was German. Notice it's in the past tense. And one day, she pulls me aside and says, "You know, you have 2 sisters. I'm an only child." And I go, "What in the world is that about?" And then she says, "And you have another mother." And I go, "Okay." Now, I've actually been to Germany to visit my relatives, and they've never said anything about this. And generally, as the older we get, the more or less ashamed we are of what's happening to us because we have no choice, and the more we're willing to talk about things. And so I found out that the 2 children who I used to play with at my favorite aunt and uncle's house, we played a game called Blindy Coo, and with their grandmother. And the doors to the kitchen would be closed, and the blind person would chase us around, and once she caught one of us, we'd become the blind cow. So, it made me think, oh, now what's really going on? Because 40 years later, my cousin tells me, "Oh, those weren't your aunt and uncle's children. They were war orphans." And I'm going, is my mother trying to tell me something? Unfortunately, she was too far gone to be able to give me any details or what she really meant. So I don't know. But anyway, here's one of the incidents, not to deal with those, whether she was really my mother or not, because the title was just totally made up by me because of something else she did. How to spell Muskogee. She wants to know how to spell Muskogee, Oklahoma. I ask her why, and she repeats the question. I spell the town's name and know that I need to know more. Does a friend live there? No answer. Is she buying something from there? No answer. Is she requesting vacation information? No answer. Is she a fan of Merle Haggard's Okie from Muskogee? Recently, I have called the police to ask for help tracking down the Mercedes that has consumed my mother's life. Each day she waits and expects to see a red truck parked in a cracked concrete driveway. A month after my call, a detective tells me what their investigation has found out. The people who call my mother are Jamaican, but the money is not sent directly to that sunny, marijuana-besotted, befuddled island, but to an old woman in Muskogee who suffers from dementia like my mother, and according to the detective has no understanding of what she is doing. The money is forwarded to a storefront in Las Vegas. The detective laments that they will never stop the fraud or retrieve the money, but he's encouraged. During the investigation, he is happy to report that he busted 3 people working out of a trailer who were knee-deep in stolen credit cards. My mother never stops being helpful. I've read a couple of times from this book at readings where some people had already bought copies and read it, and I was quite taken aback by what they had to say. They said, it's really a funny book. I'm thinking, this is really a tragic book, and they're telling me it's funny. And what I basically decided was it's part of my style and my attempt to be witty. So that's pretty much what.
Walter, have you ever been to the castle in Muskogee?
No, I haven't. I've been wanting to go to the Bob Dylan Museum in Tulsa. Yeah.
Been to Muskogee many times.
Is that because you have many friends there?
No, usually I'm going through Dallas and then I wind up spending the night in Muskogee.
How do you spell it?
My
Oh,
spelling
God,
is- my
I'm
spelling
really
is
going
terrible.
on too long.
My spelling is terrible.
I'm going to end with this poem. Usually I'm very organized. But after a week of these drugs, I mean, I'm just kind of like I'm walking in circles.
Well, you've been fantastic, so we need to start handing out muscle relaxers.
This book is not available. It's printed in Germany, but it's wholly in English. Unfortunately, it's kind of out of print unless I give them a call and say, oh, I need another 20 copies. But the cost of shipping at this point in time is so expensive, it would double the price of the book, so it's not worth it. Unfortunately, because there's some really nice photographs in here, most of which I took. A line from Dogen, a Zen master from
Long time ago.
the 12th century,
Okay.
yeah, maybe something like that. A line from Dogen. These clocks are useless. They only measure themselves. Early, late, later still. How long can they go on chanting this one tick before you walk out the door? Room upon room, you continue on uncertain. What is it you hope to find? Calendars can't keep track of the days. Vast seasons come and go. You follow the geese who follow the stars. Departure and arrival unspeakable. Knowing an illusion. Not knowing ignorance. We measure the timeless. Where do we turn? Where do we turn? Into the turning. Thanks. Do you guys have any questions? Okay.
Just how to spell Muskogee, I guess.
Instead of muscle relaxants, try arnica. It's a great.
Oh, I was in so much pain when I read the scale. I said, "No, this is a 10." I mean, it was like long, wide knives were being stabbed in the side of my back here, where I hit that corner of that piece of wood.
Well, arnica is both oral and topical, so I recommend it.
Well, at this point, I was just hoping that the doctor knew what he was doing, and actually, I think he did know, because at the moment, I'm not feeling any pain. But I also hardly have my act together.
Unfortunately, I gave all my oxy for my cancer surgery to two young men from New Jersey.
You're still waiting for the profits, right?
You should.
Yeah, I
Should
think
have
so.
sold it.
John, was that at that November poetry reading?
I think so. But I don't engage in any of that because I have addictive personality, so I just stick to cupcakes, Mark.
Well, just to let you know, just a little tease. I meant to read the poem Gorilla God, but enough is enough. That's about how to write a good poem, which means that I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Walter. That was awesome. Awesome. And I can't even be organized when I'm not on muscle relaxers, so appreciate it. And if you had spelled Muskogee, I would have been really shamed.
I can't spell it, you know.
Yeah. But I'm gonna let everyone. We're gonna take a 10-minute break. I'm gonna let everyone talk to Walter and go buy his books. I'm gonna go down to the ATM machine down at the bank because I want one of his books myself. But take 10 minutes. We will come back. Anyone else who wants to read, We will do that. Appreciate everyone being here. If anyone wants to sign up, the sheet is right here.